care of that. Father God, please just help us to get through the rest of this night, given the hour that we are considering these items. Please help us to keep the interest of the town and the interest of its citizens in sight, and bless this meeting and all those who are affected by our decisions or recommendations. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay? The next thing is we certainly want to welcome our new planning director, Sherry Moss. And this is the first meeting where she has joined us, and we're happy to have her. We will, as we've been asked to, continue to wear our masks due to COVID-19. And want to remind everybody the planning board is a body of citizens that are volunteers. We are appointed by the town council, for those that don't know. And we review plans and proposed developments to see if they're in accordance with the town's regulations, and just help plan for the growth of our town. The first item for consideration is item number Z 2020-03, the request by Michael Hurt to rezone 9.45 acres of land at 608 Western Avenue, parcel ID 380006299776, from R10 medium density residential to MF multifamily residential, per Division 9 of the Town of Nashville zoning ordinance. My understanding is that there were 2 planning board members who wanted to abstain from being, so are they going to remain sitting here?
Madam Chairman, I'd just like to ask that I be recused on the item Z 2020-03 and SU 2020-01.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to be recused from Z 2020-03 and SU 2020-1.
Thank you. So I will just mention, as we consider these items, that we do have a quorum of the board. A quorum is 4 members according to our rules of procedure. It's a 7-member board. And regarding voting, the chairman only votes when the board has a tie. So I can participate in any other way, but I will only vote if we have a tie, and it looks like that won't happen if we have 3 people. But we'll take 2 of the 3 to carry a motion. Having heard the testimony, does planning board have any questions or any comments? We can ask staff for more information if we need it.
Patsy, would the board entertain the staff's recommendation with regard to this rezoning at this time?
Yes, that would be my next question.
Okay.
Having heard the testimony, do you have a recommendation?
Yes, according to the table of permitted uses in Nashville zoning ordinance, the permitted uses under the proposed district classification would be in harmony with the existing permitted land uses in the area. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the zoning request and advises that if future development takes place, development shall meet all requirements of the town zoning ordinance.
If I may add to that, the basis of that recommendation is the fact that this neighborhood is a mixed-use neighborhood with multiple zonings already in place. Therefore, rezoning this property to multifamily is certainly not inconsistent with the existing zoning that is in place for this area.
So it may be helpful, planning board members, to turn to this page that has some blue on it. 2020-03.
Chairman, for clarification, are you referring to the zoning map or the identification of the property zoned in and around the site in question?
Talking about the consistency statement
The
that
consistency
needs to be
statement.
made.
Okay.
We've got a lot of papers tonight.
Good.
Right there.
Madam Chairman, if I may add, I know it was stated earlier at this meeting that North Carolina law requires rezonings to be consistent with the land use plan and the comprehensive plan. My research and counsel, I'll wait till he gets back, but that is not an absolute requirement. North Carolina law allows towns to rezone property where that rezoning would be inconsistent with the land use plan and the comprehensive plan. They do that specifically because they know towns evolve, towns change, things grow, and it's difficult to maintain a comprehensive plan and a land use plan that is the most up-to-date of best in uses at all times. We're required once every 10 years in the state of North Carolina to update our comprehensive plan, and Nashville is right at that time period. As was mentioned earlier, the town council has contracted with a consulting firm to help the planning board, to help the staff and the town council update the comprehensive plan and the land use plan. So it is permissible to rezone land which is inconsistent with the land use plan. What is required is that the planning board and the town council have to consult that document and that land use plan and note that in a consistency statement when they make their recommendation to rezone or not rezone. Sherry, do you have anything to add to that?
No.
So without changes to ordinances or plans, my understanding is we have the option of maybe number 1 or number 2, and there are sample motions to approve or reject the rezoning. And we would just, instead of the word comprehensive plan, need to substitute land use, is my understanding. Is that correct?
Sherry, do you know the answer to that question?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Instead of, if the board chooses to recommend a motion similar to option 1 or option 2, to either approve or reject the rezoning, then it would need to reference the land use plan, not the comprehensive plan, correct?
Madam Chairman, and the planning board, do you want to have discussion among yourself with regard to the testimony you heard here this evening with the rezoning of this property? If it's something that you feel is in harmony and appropriate, for this area, considering all the various zoning classifications that are in this area. I mean, that's basically what the planning board is charged to do, is determine whether or not this zoning ordinance is appropriate and in harmony and nonconformity and not in conflict with the existing land uses and zoning in the area already.
We heard a great deal of testimony in the public hearing. Does the board have any questions perhaps about any of these maps that show the zoning of the area, that show the land use plan in relation to the property? The descriptions of the districts, or the table of permitted uses to see what uses are allowed in the various districts. Particularly R10 is highlighted yellow and multifamily is highlighted pink. And then there's the lot size, the dimensional requirements in green. If you have questions, we can ask staff for some clarification. I will say, I really appreciate the good maps that we had this time. It's really, I can see a big difference.
A question for Randy. So I was under the impression that zoning had to touch. So I know it doesn't touch here, but I was understanding when you do a zoning, there has to be a zoning attached to it. So multifamily had to touch multifamily, business had to touch business. That's not true?
From my past experiences, I look at it that way too, and also even across the street or in close proximity. And then again, I looking at the differences between the land uses to see how similar they are and how they are allowed.
I guess the question is, what is close proximity? I guess is the question, I guess.
Like directly across the street, I say that's close proximity.
Yes, and looking at the allowable permitted uses in the R10 and the multifamily, really the only difference is you can't put apartment buildings in the R10 zoning district, but you can in the multifamily. So in multifamily, you can have single-family homes, you can have duplexes, you can have threeplexes, and you can have apartment buildings, a single one on a lot, or multiple apartment buildings with a special use permit. But the multifamily zoning is residential, as is R10. And the only real difference between them is whether apartment building are allowed or not allowed. And they're not allowed in the R10, but they are in multifamily. Hence the request for the rezoning. Sherry, you have anything to add to that?
And just to add to that, like, for example, with the land uses, the differences that I mentioned earlier, where some of the land uses, the R10 may require a special use permit, but the multifamily, they're allowed allowed by right. But going through the actual, table of permitted uses and looking at them side by side, they have majority of the uses, they're the same, whether both of them may allow special use permits, but overall, they have similarity uses.
if you were gonna make a motion for option one, you would not say that it was consistent, with the land use plan, you would need some wording, say that it's consistent maybe with other plans, but it's at this point in time inconsistent with our land use plan.
It is. The land use plan shows this property as low density. It's actually zoned R10, which is medium density, but it's being requested to be rezoned to high density. And again, the law in North Carolina allows towns to rezone property even if it's inconsistent with the land use plan. It just has to be so noted in the consistency statement.
Her question was, the notes we have says it is consistent with the town of Nashville's
Right,
comprehensive
you wouldn't be able to make, you wouldn't be able to have that in your motion. If you were,
Right.
if the planning board member were to make a motion to recommend rezoning of this property to multifamily, you would have to note in that motion that that rezoning recommendation is inconsistent with the land use map. But again, it all comes down to the testimony you heard this evening, whether you feel that this multifamily zoning is overall in harmony with the area and the appropriateness of it within the other zoning classifications that are very close to this. That's the determination that the planning board has to make.
I'm confused.
Well, I don't know if looking at the zoning map of the area would help any, but there's a large filled-out sheet that shows this property and the zoning of property within 1,000 feet of it, basically. And to me, that zoning map shows that this is a very diverse, multi-zoned area.
No,
That's this one. I think you're talking about.
And I apologize for the page numbers not being numbered in the packet. That it certainly would have been much easier to tell you what page number to look at. This one here.
What was taken out?
Yeah, you should have.
It's the zoning map in Z 2020-03.
But that's not what I know that, but I can't find it if it's there.
I'm not seeing it in her packet.
Was that one of the inserts?
They gave us a new one tonight. It's one of the ones they gave tonight.
I see it all the way through, but I have not seen one yet. No, not like that. Mm-mm.
I think what he was saying there, here's the multifamily.
That's the old one I had in my packet, and this is the one I got tonight. This one has more white little, yeah. I marked mine, so we'll mix them up.
You got it. That's why you got the right one.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my problem is, it's consistent, I guess, if you have the multifamily across the road, and it is different places, but it's also inconsistent if you look at the neighborhoods and the houses next to it. And that's the problem of having, come up with a motion.
Well, what do we need, if we pass the motion to have it, what I'm trying to say is, do we have to if we pass the first one, do we have to pass the second one for the?
Two different issues.
So what you can do, well, School of Government, they had a great example. You could, you know, the choice of approving and denying, then you can state whether it's consistent or inconsistent and why, and whether it's reasonable or not reasonable and why. Okay. So you want to know if you pass, I'm sorry, what was your question again?
Right. We have the first one
Right.
here. We had two
Right.
tonight.
Mm-hmm.
If we pass the first one, do we have to pass,
So
okay,
you're talking about the rezoning and then the special?
rezoning first,
Right,
and then the special use? They're separate.
right, they're separate.
Okay.
And they're both recommendations that would have to go, to the council.
Council.
Right,
Mhm.
on Tuesday.
Recommend denial.
Because they would have to do the final vote either way,
Right.
either way you decide.
All right. Recommend denial of it. If you want us to follow this one, no, applications on Okay. You want the information? If that's what you want to do.
When you're ready, I'll take a motion. Anybody who wants to make it?
I'll make the motion that we recommend denial of the proposed rezoning map amended and stated. Planning board finds and determines that the case number Z 2020-03 is inconsistent with the town of Nashville land use plan because this property is designated for future low-density residential growth. Therefore, the amendment is unreasonable and not in the public interest because it fits into the character of the area.
We have a motion. Any discussion? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. House and a second by Ms. Lowe. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of this recommendation for denial, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So this issue will come before town council on next Tuesday evening at their regular meeting. The next item for consideration is SU 20-01. And based on our first recommendation, would it be appropriate, I'm asking the attorney, should we consider tabling this issue until a decision is made? Or should we go ahead and consider?
I think that, you know, that you could use your judgment to continue it, but I think that what the town council is expecting is to take up both matters. You know, the town council may approve the rezoning, it may not approve the rezoning. If it approves the rezoning, then it would like to take up the second matter. It's still within your judgment to table it, but if you tabled it, then they wouldn't be able to take it up at their next meeting.
And Patsy, some of the questions with regard to the special use in this case that weren't answered, they're not gonna be able to be answered, like the transportation and the turning lane, until an actual application for driveway permits have been submitted.
Right.
And the developer obviously isn't gonna do that unless they know the property's been rezoned and the conditional use permit has been approved, so to speak. So, you know, I heard what Craig Smith was saying this evening, and I agree, those questions were unanswered and are unanswered. But at this point in time, we're powerless to get answers to those.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board regarding SU 2020-01? We have a request by Michael Hurt for a special use permit to construct more than one multifamily building on a single lot at 608 Western Avenue, Nash County, parcel 380006299776 in the town of Nashville per section 18-113.3 and 18-114 of the Nashville zoning ordinance.
Patsy, before you ask for a motion on that, could the staff give its recommendation with regard to this conditional use permit?
Right, yes. First, I'm gonna ask if they wanna consider it tonight.
Okay.
Yes,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yes. So, do y'all wanna, consider this, or should we, wait until after the rezoning? The manager has indicated that council would prefer for us to consider it and have a recommendation in the event that it's approved. They could take up both items on Tuesday night. Okay? The consensus is to move on. So,
Move on what?
so I guess go ahead and consider this
Okay,
evening.
okay.
Is that right? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. So,
You need a motion that we wait.
well, before that, let,
Okay.
are we in consensus to go ahead and consider this tonight? Is that what I heard?
That's what Betty said,
Okay.
that's what you.
All right, so, could we have, a recommendation from staff?
Okay, based on testimonies heard, application submittal, staff recommends approval of the requested special use permit, pending conditions requested by the planning board and town council.
And Jerry, could
And
you expand on the
yes.
reasons?
And the reason being, what the applicant has presented, for, hold on, what he's proposing on the property, due to public health and safety in regards to fencing, storm water pond, landscaping buffer, keeping existing vegetative buffer, having access to the existing water and sewer. He's proposing sidewalks and also a proposed turn lane along the frontage of the property, and also the step-down consistency of buildings.
If I may add to that, with regard to the public infrastructure that's going to serve this, it is sufficient. There's a 12-inch water main out front, there's a 12-inch sewer main in the back. All the storm water from this development is going to be captured and retained on site. It's not going through anybody else's property. The roadway that serves this is a state highway and doesn't go on, or route traffic on any residential streets to come and go. Those were some of the factors we took into consideration in rendering this recommendation for approval. Also weighed heavily on this was the fact that in order to develop the property in the manner that the applicant has submitted, that three-story building is essentially from the road going to be a two-story structure, and you're only going to see it from the front. There's natural vegetation and screening on the east with a large gully waterway. So anybody living east of this is not going to be able to see it from their backyard, their side yard. similar on the west side by leaving that mature trees in there and putting in the 8-foot fence, and again, lowering the first sets of buildings. You're only going to be able to see this development from the road. I know there was a lot of comment that it's not proportionate. It would be out of proportion with what's in the neighborhood. Staff took a look at that. Again, from the road, you'll only see 2 of the apartment buildings. You won't even know the other 4 behind it. So from a perception standpoint and an appropriateness and a feelness standpoint, it's going to appear from the road as if it's a 2 apartment building complex. You'll only know if the other 4 are there if you drive into it. If you're not going to see them from 3 of the 4 sides of the development.
I'm trying to go through the notes that I made regarding, some of the issues that came up and what some of the recommended, conditions might be. Can you review again your list that you just went through?
The stormwater retention pond, and they wanted to retain, the existing vegetative buffer, and the, access to the existing infrastructure of the water and sewer, the proposed turn lane along the frontage, proposed turn lane along the, frontage of the property. And they also mentioned the ingress and egress of the property. And the step-down consistency of the buildings. And also on the site plan, he showed, fencing as well.
Just so I'm clear, the last time we voted against it, right, the last?
We have voted,
Okay, all
yeah,
right, I
we
make sure I understand.
recommended that council deny
Okay,
the rezoning.
okay.
But just in case they approve the rezoning, we're making a recommendation regarding the special use permit and the conditions that might be attached to it, which they can add to or delete or whatever they want to do.
I recommend we disapprove SU 2020-01.
Okay, we have a recommendation to deny the special use permit. Any discussion?
I think this is a wonderful project, and this will be a wonderful thing for Nashville. I do not think it's the right location.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Madam Chairman, I have one thing to add. One of the requirements that the planning board has to do in granting or in recommending or not recommending a special use is come up with the 4 finding of facts, that the special use will or will not materially endanger public health and safety, that the special use does or does not meet all the specific requirements contained in the zoning ordinance for that special use, that the special use will or will not substantially injure the value of adjoining property and abutting property, and that the location and the character of the use, if developed in according to the plan that was submitted, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located.
I'll amend my motion to include the fourth statement.
4 findings of fact.
Yes.
Okay. And that amendment would be that the special use does not.
The fourth one, it does not, in harmony with the character of the area,
Okay.
whatever it says.
Do you want to consider each one of the 4 findings of fact?
You're supposed to.
Yeah.
I thought it did.
So we have to consider them individually and vote on them individually.
Yeah, and Bill made the motion for one of them that he didn't believe was the last one, that the location and character was in harmony.
Correct.
So I think the procedure would be first that we would complete the vote, correct? And then we would address the findings, correct?
If you need to do both, I don't think it matters which order you do it in.
Okay.
And so since you're, it doesn't really matter which order, so since you're proceeding with that motion that you have on the floor, it's fine to take that motion, but you just make sure you have the findings of fact as well.
Okay. So we've had a motion, we've had a second,
Yeah.
yes, and, so all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed? Okay, now if we can take these, specific findings and vote on them individually, and if you wanna look at them, they are in our packet on this item. They look like, they're a 3-page document that starts with the following rules apply to the quasi-judicial public hearing. Right before the table of permitted uses. I know we have a lot of papers tonight. So the first finding is the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan as submitted and approved.
We're supposed to say what does or doesn't do that?
Yes.
Can you read it again, please?
Use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan as submitted and approved.
So that statement's not true, is that right? Because I still can't find that page, I'm sorry.
It's also on the agenda report,
The very first
the
page.
very first page, the agenda report, and they're listed in there.
Jeff, tell you.
Okay. If you look on the agenda report at the front of the item as well.
So A is true, it will not materially endanger the public health and safety.
You've got A is true.
Yes. Are y'all agreeing to that?
You need to address all 4 findings of fact. You can make one motion, and that
Okay.
one motion can address all 4 findings of fact.
Okay.
So you don't necessarily need to take 4 different votes. You can do one
vote.
motion addressing all 4 things.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if somebody wants to make a motion and address all 4
Says
things,
like A is true, A is,
Yes.
B is true.
yes, as long as the clerk has it in the minutes, when you're all said and done, you're good.
And it only takes one finding of fact not to be true to recommend not to do it.
So we don't have to say each one, we just have to say, based on based on the facts, it doesn't meet the findings, is that what you say?
I
Yes,
think,
I think he's saying that maybe, Bill, you would say something like, I recommend that A is true, B is true, C is true, and D is not true.
I think that sounds good.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we include the findings that A, B, and C are true and D is not true.
Have a motion?
Second.
Have a second? Is there any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
The
Okay.
Patsy, can I say one thing? Since the council is here, that if the zoning is approved and the special use permit comes before the council, and the council decides to deny the special use permit, the council will have to enumerate the reasons why not approving the special use permit. You don't have to worry about that, because you're just making a recommendation, but just mentioning to the council that if they approve the hurdle, jump over the hurdle of approving zoning, and then the council is considering this, they'll need to think that if they deny it, they'll need to list the reasons why they denied it. I'm just, since the council's here, I mentioned that.
Okay. Okay, and since we had a recommendation for denial, there are no conditions were attached to it that we discussed. But town council will also consider this request on Tuesday evening, September 1st. The next item for consideration is SU 2020-03, 20-02, request by Four Seasons for a special use permit to construct more than one multifamily building on a single lot at East Old Spring Hope Road, Nash County, parcel 3810-15532563 in the town of Nashville per section 18-113.3 and 18-114 of the Nashville zoning ordinance. Just, y'all have any, welcome back, gentlemen. Does anybody have any questions of staff? Does staff have a recommendation?
Evidence submitted to staff complies with requirements of the Nashville Land Use Plan, and as well as testimony that was heard from the from the engineer. Both single-family dwellings and two-family duplexes are located across the street, and this area is characterized as a mix of both residential and agricultural land uses. The property will be in harmony with the residential character of the area, and staff recommends approval of the requested special use permit and considering the findings of facts.
Do I have a motion? And granting the motion, if you want to, you can address, go ahead and address the A, B, C, and D. Or you can do that separately.
Yeah, I think we'll approve this.
Keeping in mind that all special use permits will move on to town council, and they still will have to comply with federal, state, and local ordinances and requirements. Can I get a motion to approve or deny?
I'm making a motion to approve.
A motion to approve this request as
Special use
submitted.
permit.
A second,
We have a second.
yep.
Any discussion?
Seems to fit or meet all four categories.
We have a motion and a second to approve the request that is consistent with A, B, C, and D being met, correct?
Yep.
Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? This issue will also come before town council on Tuesday, September 1st. Thank you.
You want to stay on for the review?
Yeah, we have one more.
You can't leave, we can't leave.
Nancy, would you ask the board to make a motion in a second with regard to the four findings of fact? Or
You
do
want
you
a
feel
separate
there,
one?
or was that
Well, I think
included?
she
Dwight included it.
I think she incorporated
We
it.
included
Yeah,
that.
tried to
Yeah.
incorporate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was, I think, as long,
Sort of an amended
That's it.
motion.
as long as it gets recorded in the minutes that way, yes. Mr. Jordan.
I think it was Mr. Jordan.
No, no, it was,
No, he made the motion.
it was Bill.
Okay.
Dwight amended it.
Okay.
I think he did, but either way, it's fine.
Then,
I'll say
I
it.
think I did both of them.
It's late.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, is that straight? All right, the next item for consideration is CP 2020-01, consideration of a construction plat for the proposed Bradford Place subdivision located behind Food Line off of East Point Avenue. There are approximately 41 proposed lots. Nash County parcel ID 381006484519U. This property contains approximately 25.63 acres and is zoned R4 high density residential. We have a presentation by staff.
Yes, I'll say something quick and then you can come on
Okay.
up. So, this is just a construction plat that's being forwarded to the planning board and, town council for review and, approval. And this property was, recently rezoned from B1 to R4 high density residential zoning.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you again. This is the property that was before you several months ago for rezoning to an R4 that you and the council saw fit to rezone. This is the construction plat for this development. It adheres to the conditions. There are 50-foot wide lots. A zoning of R4 allows for 40, but there are 50-foot. The minimum square footage on each one is over 6,000 square feet, as we sort of discussed previously. And again, the reason for the R4 zoning was to allow for the side setbacks to accommodate a 38-foot wide house. So the plans we have before you meet that criteria. There are a few outstanding comments that we still need to address go through the town council TRC review, and to address those, we believe we can meet those, and we are requesting that you review and approve or recommend approval of this development.
So, Ms. Planning Director, do you have a recommendation?
I recommend, approval of the construction plat.
Is that subject to TRC review?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion we approve CP 2020-01 as submitted, and, you have to include the four things again? No.
Would that be subject to TRC
TRC.
review?
Yes.
Any comments? Do I have a
Second.
motion? Discussion?
Second.
Do I have a second?
Yeah.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, Mike, this will also go before town council on Tuesday evening. My understanding.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board.
Thank you. Is there any other business to come before the board?
No.
All right. Then our next meeting, is scheduled for September 30th. And we look forward to seeing you there. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.